Oh, welcome everyone. We're glad that you're here and we're hoping that the others get to come along here shortly. I'm Audrey Garza. I work at the Merced County Office of Ed, and we're excited to have this opportunity to share a little bit more with you this month. This is our community of practice number 5, which we're doing a virtual community of practice in light of our current situation. And so this is our 5th session this year, and we're going to focus on civic action projects. Do you want to forward that slide? We are the Region 7 CLIC team. Our community of practice covers all 6 counties, Fresno, Mariposa, Merced, Tulare, as well as Kings and Madera. And we have representatives from these 4 counties. You see Stephanie Bobman on the left, and she's probably on one of your little Brady Bunch squares as well. From Mariposa, she's a high school teacher and an awesome member of this team. Next, we have Carrie Faria. She is from Fresno County Office of Ed, a consultant, and does great work, and we're glad that she's with us today. And our fearless leader in the middle, Justin from Tulare, he's always so gracious and supportive of all of the work that we strive to do together, and he kind of keeps us on track, and we are grateful to him for his leadership. From Tulare. And then Wasim Absoud, who you will hear a lot from today. He's an expert from Merced, a high school teacher, sharing the practical experiences and knowledge that he's gleaned in his role as a member of this team and as a classroom practitioner. And we're glad for each of them being with us. But most importantly, we're glad that you're here with us today. Just as a reminder, as we look at the framework, the history, social science framework, the 4 shifts, and Wasim, if you want to go ahead and advance through those 4, just I won't belabor the point. But the 4 major shifts of the history, social science framework incorporates content, literacy, inquiry, and citizenship. And so that makes our CLIC for our community of practice. But we really have been working to highlight these shifts within the framework, but also to apply that layer of practical application. We know that often in professional development and study higher education, there's a lot on theory, but we really strive to provide the practical applications of what this might look like or sound like in your classrooms tomorrow, or in the near future, or sometimes they are farther out in the future as you're digging into some of these concepts, practices, and strategies. But you will notice that we are always striving to provide you with tools, resources, strategies that you can utilize to deepen your students' work with content, literacy, inquiry, and citizenship. And so for today, we're going to focus on civic action projects and what that might look like and sound like in your classrooms.
Okay, thank you. Once again, my name is Wasim Absoud. I am a teacher at Gustine High School, and I've taught there since August of 1999. I have mainly seniors for economics and government, but I do have some sophomores for AP World. I've literally taught everything in the department at the high school level. But what I want to share with you is that this isn't just for high school. We want to make sure that you are aware of all of the resources that are available K-12 throughout all of the grade spans to build towards this idea of civic learning and civic engagement. And I think that we can all recognize the importance of that. One of my favorite quotes on the subject is from Dwight Eisenhower. Politics ought to be the part-time profession of every citizen who would protect the rights and privileges of free men. Today we would say of free people, but the underlying information still stands. First thing that I need to share with you guys, though, is that there are no cookie cutter solutions. There are no one size fits all programs that you can use. And I have experience, 20 years of experience to demonstrate that. I am going to share with you some of the programs and some of the resources that are available, but really it's going to be you putting together what works with your students in the place that you are with the time that you have. And to help you out with that, the California State Department of Education has rolled out a compendium to go alongside the California History and Social Science Standards. Sorry, the framework that was just rolled out, and that was put out in 2016. And we're going to be looking into this a little bit in depth later on. Most important thing to understand is that it has a K through 12 articulation, each grade building upon the skills that are developed in prior years. So this is literally a step-by-step roadmap of the types of things you could be doing in kindergarten, first, second, third, sixth, eighth, 10th, all the way through. It isn't just civics is for high school. And I do need to make an acknowledgement, and this is something that I, as a high school history teacher, haven't done a very good job at. I need to do better at sharing the resources with the elementary teachers in my district, because we do need to build an articulated pathway for civic learning that goes alongside the articulated pathways that we have for English language arts, for math, and those subjects. So we are going to come back to the Civic Compendium, but I did tell you that I was going to share with you some resources. We're going to go a little bit more in depth on the program options in terms of the Civic Action Project, which I have the most experience with. We're also going to look at democracy schools, and I'm going to share with you some information about the MICVA challenge. And then on the other side, I do have, I don't want to say standalone resources, but these are not as much a coordinated program. These are places where you can go and get information, where you can go and find out what you need for a specific lesson plan. But talking about the program options, because we're going to go a little bit more in depth, I want to share with you that I have had 2 years where I have run civic action projects in my classroom. The first year was the first full complete year that I was able to do it. I used an amalgam of a lot of different sources. I used a lot of civic action project. That's where I really found that it probably works best for me and for my style of teaching. But I also looked at some of the lessons and activities with the MICVA challenge. And I looked at some of the concepts, some of the inquiry lessons, some of the rubrics at Democracy School to try to put something together. For year 2, I wish I could tell you that I have solid information that I could share with you, but unfortunately last year was year 2, and we do government in the spring in Gustine. So right around the time we were getting into phase 3 of 5, COVID-19, we got shut down, and I called it off because I didn't want to put my students in a position where they're interacting in a community. I'll just be blunt, because all of us are educators here. That mattered more to me than the stricture from on high not to give new information. I felt really bad about not sharing the rest of the project. So I did give the outline in the Civic Action Project from the Constitutional Rights Foundation to my students last year, and I had started the process, but we weren't able to complete it. So let's talk a little bit about the Civic Action Project, part of the Constitutional Rights Foundation. If you are looking for a place where you can find everything in one location, this would probably be the place to go. It is for both teachers and students. There are lessons, there are organizers, planners, and you can use them both online and offline. Presumably it would be online for this year, but I'm particularly enamored of the fact that I can print things off, because a lot of my students in Gustine, a very rural community, having something online is great when they're at school, but distance learning is just proving, I think, to me more than anything else in Gustine, we do have a problem with online exclusive information. And what the project does, what their civic action project, the way it's set up, they are doing research and they are figuring out what it is that they are going to be doing the action about. Then they get to figure out where they want to go with it. What is the action that they want to put at the tail end, the informed action? What is the service piece? And there are a number of online webinars that are offered for students by students. I think it's a very powerful organizational tool, and I cannot stress enough that if you are looking for one place to go and find information for how you can set up lessons for your students, how you can plan, and how you can implement a civic action project, this would be the place to go. It is most obviously set up for a government class in senior year. However, there are a lot of people who are using it in other fashions. And it's in fact, it's designed to be used across multiple grade levels. So for example, I do have an 8th grade teacher in our district who I've been talking to about possibly, as I started this January, he might be starting with his 8th grade students an online version of the Civic Action Project. And it would have a lot of the same features. You were just looking at having it to a lower skill level, or at a more content and grade specific set of goals and objectives that you would have for your students. So it really is set up for a lot of different grade levels. You can pick and choose pieces that you like from it, and then other things that you can leave to the side. It has been done with grades as low, with students as young as 4th grade students. Okay, moving on, for democracy schools, this is more of a way to create your program. The focus with democracy schools from the LA County Office of Education, the focus really is providing you the professional development and the resources that will eventually lead to a certification as a democracy school. So this is a program where they will give you access to a lot of other programs. And they spend a good deal of time talking about structured controversies. I do have a little bit of a video clip to play. It is about 1 minute and 30. So I do apologize if this goes long. And let me know if there are any audio issues.
Let's start our conversation about dialogue about controversial issues. Tell us a little bit, what is it and why is it so important?
Well, civil dialogue in the classroom involves discussion and deliberations among students about what we call open questions. These are important questions for which there are multiple and competing answers. And in a high quality civil dialogue, you'll see students who are well prepared to discuss, so they quite literally know what they're talking about. You'll see students who have good discussion skills, so they know, for example, how to make a point with evidence and arguments. They know how to ask questions of their classmates. And you'll see teachers who are facilitating in a way to ensure that all the students in class have an opportunity to participate. So why are they important? Well, I think 3 reasons. One is that we want to teach students important content about the political issues of the day. And we know that when they are in discussion about that content, they're much more likely to learn it. Second, we know that in contemporary American society, there are a lot of disagreements about what we call controversial political issues. So think for a moment about a discussion about whether or not the federal minimum wage should be raised, or a discussion about whether we should have stricter gun control laws. Those are both controversial political issues. And we know that people can have highly reasoned, highly warranted, differing answers to those questions. And we want to make sure that students become part of that contemporary debate that we have in society. So we teach them about this in school.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know that I could have said it better, so I appreciate you indulging me with the video clip. I do want to...
Let's start our conversation.
Sorry. I am not going to play this video, but I do have another video clip for the MICFA challenge. There, perhaps most familiar project is Project Soapbox, and that is something that is almost international in scope. So I am going to leave the video here, but I am not going to be playing it for you guys. They do have a program called Action Civics, and it has a lot of voice and choice. In many ways, it's like the Civic Action program of the CRF, but there is a mixture of free and for-cost resources. The free resources tend to be more timely. So for example, if you go to the MICVA Challenge website, you will see that they have a series of 4 virtual lessons having to do with election 2020 and that you can deploy in the classroom. But there are also for-cost resources. I don't believe they're that expensive. If I remember correctly, it's $500 for a site license, but that's $500 that I didn't decide to spend out of my school budget. So I don't have as much experience with the Action Civics program. I do know that some of the resources that I've used, and one of the lessons that I'm going to be sharing with you in the coming few minutes actually comes from MICVA Challenge, and it's a really useful and powerful tool. So at this point in time, let me stop and ask, were there any questions in chat? And not seeing anything, we'll go ahead and move on.
I have a question, and I can say it for later if it's better. But I'm at Central, and they just made a decision at the board to cut our government classes to a semester. We usually have a year, so we have been doing civic action projects, and we're not used to having a semester. Is it still doable in a semester, and how? And we can talk later if you want. I'm concerned about continuing my civic action.
Yeah, we will talk later, almost definitely, but let me just share with you that I have never had government outside of a 1-semester course, so I don't know how you would make it work in a year. From my point of view, the timing is very tight, but if you keep the content aligned with the project, which is pretty easy with CAP, with CRF, I think you can do it, but a lot like what we have to do with distance learning, you might have to make decisions about what you keep and what you leave.
Okay, thank
because
you.
if you're, I mean, you're cutting half your time.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. So what we're leading towards with all of this is getting students to the point where they're comfortable with service learning. And service learning is a little bit different than community service. So they're not the same thing. Community service is probably something that would be more beneficial at an elementary level. You're working in the community, interacting with people in the community, you're addressing community concerns, you're exploring what it means to be in a community, but you're doing so on somebody else's agenda. There's a soup kitchen in town, and you are going to be serving soup at the soup kitchen to homeless folks. That's a need that was identified by somebody else, and the methods were identified by somebody else. That's certainly useful, but that's just one component of service learning. For service learning, you need to have a real world problem solving connection where what they are learning in class is tied to what they are learning in the service that they're giving. And this is the model that I use for the Civic Action project. So as we're going through the different phases of what they have to do as groups and individuals with the project, what I'm trying to key the content, I'm trying to align it so they're learning the content they need at the same time. So there's a connection between when they're reading about minimum wage and then they're looking at what does that mean in our community? What are the employment patterns in Gustine or in Merced in a slightly larger capacity? So you really have to focus more on the students identifying what the needs are. Excuse me, students identifying what the needs are and figuring out how to solve those. So that's for the overall kind of program, but we do have a couple of things that we wanted to share with you. I'm going to go pretty quick, but we can always come back and feel free if there are any questions. So we have 2 sample lessons, maybe a lesson template is a better way to put it. The first one is civil conversations. This also comes from the Constitutional Rights Foundation, but it is not tied into the CAP. Constitutional Rights Foundation has a lot of really good resources for teachers interested in civic engagement and the history, social science aspect of education. So to have a civil conversation, you have to make sure that everybody participates. It has to be structured. If you're just letting everybody go, then it becomes an argument rather than a structured academic discussion or a debate. You have to have some sort of anchoring text. You have to have some sort of anchoring content. And it might be helpful, especially at younger grades, to have discussion guides. The most important thing from my point of view, it has to be assessed. Much like is being driven home to us, they may be compliant, but they're not going to be engaged unless they're going to be assessed. So you need to make sure that that is what you're focusing on. But the most important thing is what I haven't mentioned, and that's the situation that we're in, the air that we're breathing in our society. And it's been this way, it's been growing this way for quite some time. So in order to handle this, the process that the process of a civil conversation means that you have to have at least one article with two sides, although it's easier with two articles, like a pro and a con sort of an article. If you have access to Avid Weekly, they have pro and con articles that are almost perfectly set up for this. You can go directly to the Constitutional Rights Foundation. They have articles that are ready and that are set up for this. You present a question and avenues for students to generate their own questions as they're exploring the material. They're exploring their thoughts, generating these questions. Then they get into small groups or maybe pairs, and they're working through the text. They're working through the material. And then they're going to discover that they really have a couple of different points of view. So the Constitutional Rights Foundation Curriculum Library is right here. You can click the link and they'll have some ready-made articles set up. There is current events, and then it's set up by world history, US history, or government economics. But I wanted to share with you the Civil Conversations Teacher's Guide, the generic kind of a teacher's guide. So hopefully that is loading. Let me know if you cannot see the Conducting a Civil Conversation in the Classroom PDF. So I will assume that everybody can see this. The basic idea is that they are going to be looking at a document and they're going to be reading it, talking to the text, they're annotating the text, they're telling us what it's about, what the main parts are, what they agree with, what they disagree with, and they're practicing the idea that you can entertain a notion without agreeing with it. So they are trying to identify what the different ideas are. And then they come up with questions about the text to go more in depth. Once they've done that, you can have your civil conversation and then reflect on the civil conversation. So it's a pretty quick 2-page worksheet, 4-page guide PDF that you can access directly from the slide. So I'm going to close this, go back over. And like I said, the entire curriculum library, and they do update it, change it from time to time, is right here. Okay, a couple of things that learn from my mistakes. Don't touch the hot stove. Let me tell you it's hot. You have to know your students. You have to know your community. If you are a new teacher, maybe talk to somebody. Like I said, I've had 20 years in, and it seems like a lot of people are more seasoned veterans in this meeting. But if you're a newbie, really make sure you know your community, because each community has different issues that are emotionally charged. Regardless, you should avoid letting students role play as any sort of religious ritual, ethnic or religious or racial groups. That's generally not a good thing to do, especially if we are trying to have people talk to each other rather than yell at each other. And then finally, when students have their own opinions, that might be something that they share publicly if that's appropriate, or maybe they don't share it publicly, or maybe they don't share it at all. Sometimes they'll want to share their opinions and you'll have to give them some avenue for that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a part of your lesson. Something to think about. Something else that actually, this is something my wife has adapted in 4th grade. So, and I know that there are people in younger grades who can do this, is the idea of a civic footprint. And I apologize for the poor graphic quality, but I do have a link where you can find it. And this is from the MICVA challenge. This was created specifically for the context of Chicago. So there are some things you'll have to modify. For our purposes, it wouldn't be aldermen, it would be city council or possibly county supervisors. We don't have district voting. We might have neighborhood voting, but probably not, unless we're in some of the larger cities. I don't know, I can't speak to Fresno, for example. And whenever you give this to your students, you do have to do the reality check. And here's why. They start off by telling where they live, what their address is. And you should allow your students be aware that there are going to be problems with that. There might be students who are homeless, who are in families experiencing domestic violence. They might have issues in terms of having temporary homes. We've had a couple of instances in our area where students are kind of moving from home to home. There might be migrancy or immigration status issues. So it's probably a good idea to let them use the school address or the home address. And then from there, they look up who are their elected representatives. So their name would go here. Alderman is a very Chicago thing. So it'd be, for my context, if they lived in Gustine, it was city council. Outside of Gustine, it was the county supervisors, because we're a one small town school district with a lot of unincorporated county. State representatives, US senators, and US congressmen. Interestingly enough, I had more problems with my seniors, I think, filling this out than my wife did with her 4th graders, because it was hard for students until they really understood what was going on. It was hard for students to grasp that the Senate has fewer senators, but there are 2 senators that represent me, versus there are 435 representatives in the House of Representatives, but only 1 represents me. So the idea of a congressional district was something that a lot of my seniors last year, this is one of the things we did, I had to go back over the idea of a congressional district because they didn't understand that. They thought they were doing the math the right way, but they hadn't considered some of the intricate content issues. Whereas the 4th graders were, oh, these are my senators, here's my congressperson. Okay. And then the reality check, I made the mistake the very first time of giving them the cityofgustine.org, which is not the right one. Cityofgustine.com is the correct one for the City of Gustine. Cityofgustine.org, I'm not going to click on it. It used to be a semi-rude image, but now it has been changed to just a generic map of the area. So somebody grabbed that domain before the City of Gustine did, and you might have similar issues in your area. It's probably a good thing to do the reality check. And you can access the challenge programs from the MICVA challenge directly at this link, or a more print-friendly version, the RHS Rough Riders version. I found that on the internet. There's a PDF that you can click here to get that. At this point, I noticed that there are some things in chat. I don't see that there are any questions. I'll go ahead and move on, but do please feel free to drop a question in chat if you have anything. Okay, so we're going to take a moment. Stephanie is going to lead us through talking about the scope and the sequence of the Civic Learning Compendium. So Stephanie, whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. All right, so what we're gonna ask you to do, sorry, Wasim pointed out this resource earlier in the presentation, and we're gonna ask you for a moment to take a look at it. So Justin just placed the link in the chat. If you could please click on that link, And what we would like you to do is, if you start first with looking at the table of contents, skimming the table of contents, looking for something that jumps out to you, maybe something specific to your grade level, that's fine. Or maybe just a topic or a skill that jumps out to you that catches your eye. And then find the page number on the compendium, scroll down, and we're gonna give, I'm looking at my clock here, we're gonna give you about 6 or 7 minutes to please skim over that lesson. The compendium is an excellent resource for K-12 and for K-12 articulation. So understanding, again, what what is being taught in the grades before your students get to you, and how that can be built upon, but also a great resource of ideas on how to address some of these issues in civic learning and civic engagement. So if you can pick one out in the table of contents, please scroll to that page and be ready, again, in about 6 or 7 minutes, to give us just a brief overview. Again, what sticks out, what jumps out at you? What's something you noticed, you learned, something that you were like, oh my gosh, I can do this tomorrow, or hey, that's a project I'd like to build in, so that you can share with the group some of the ideas that are available in this compendium. So again, the link is in the chat. If you can click on that, I'll stop talking for a moment and give you some minutes to skim over just one of the grade level pages. The things that I find as I skim through these is I find that I'm inspired by a lot of the examples given at the younger grade levels, whereas I teach 10th and 11th grade, looking at some of the ideas for activities in the primary grades that can then be, adjusted for activities for older kids, and applied to the material that that we're learning in our content, but some of the activities that are really versatile and can be used across a lot of different grade levels. So would anyone like to share out first the one that they looked at? I have some to share too, but I'll give you a chance first.
Hi,
Hey,
guys. So I was looking at the 12th grade. I do 12th grade civics econ. But it has a whole section on the role of media, which I tried to get something together for my class this semester, but there was just no time. But putting together something that relates to the role of social media and kind of the role of censorship, and is it their place? How does that impact our information and our voting? And like trying to put something together on that. And this has a lot of good ideas on that. So I tried to work it into, because I got this packet from another CLIC conference. So I was looking at it when I was trying to put that together. I just didn't have enough time to do it, but I really want to get something along the.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Brooke. Anyone else have one they're willing to share? They went over.
I looked at the 12th grade too, but I was also noticing for the 11th grade US history that they have the civic learning application for each unit. I thought that was really, I might end up teaching that next year. So I really appreciated that there was that connection between the US history, because US history is, I think, pretty easy to connect to civic action and civic learning, but to have those explicitly laid out for you is just a nice place to start with, so that I'm not creating everything from scratch. So I appreciated that.
Excellent, thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'll go next if that's okay.
Sure. And then I think Gail after. Perfect, thank you.
Let me, I'm fixing this right here. But one thing that I found interesting in what we're doing here, I work for Fresno Unified School District, so I oversee K through 12 history, social science, and civic learning. And one of the first phases of approach that we're doing is looking at the civic learning progression in elementary grades and how each grade level builds on the previous grades. And so I found this document to be very helpful in initiating that conversation with teachers and being in space with teachers to say like, hey, your curriculum, we use Wonders at Fresno Unified, they're already making connections and is aligned to the framework, which your new adoption materials talks about good citizen and learning rules and those natural connections that are already embedded in the curriculum. I like how this document initiates those conversations and aligns civic learning and civic competencies. So I think I would say really the struggle is kind of bringing together the K through 12 civic learning continuum, and so that it represents a student holistically. I think that's where we're struggling at in these initial stages for expanding civic learning. But yeah, I definitely appreciate this resource. So that's what I wanted to share.
Great. Thank you so much.
Hey, hi, I'm Gail, and I'm at the opposite end of the educational spectrum. I teach TK, and we have a worker coming in and out of the house, all putting my mask up and down. These are my teaching assistants, Mr. Wiggles and Miss Marmalade. And it talked about doing mock activities. We did an election. And Mr. Wiggles talked about what he does for the students. He taught the rules in the beginning of the year. And Miss Marmalade talked about what she did. She tends, when the children are learning a new skill, when I say something, they say something, Miss Marmalade talks for the student part. With digital learning, and now the students are in the classroom, but I'm still in my little home classroom. So I looked at the simulations, and then was also interested in learning the rules. That's a lot of what TK is about, learning the rules and how the rules at school are different than the rules at home.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And I don't know if you noticed, but you immediately got the attention of my first graders in here who immediately wanted to know what I was watching on the screen. Fantastic. Thank you. Did anyone else have one they want to share? Oh, sorry.
Hi.
Okay. Thank you. Speaking of first graders, I looked over the first grade one, and it has, as you guys were saying, all of the great information about how to articulate, which is really, really helpful. But I was enjoying reading one of the supplemental activities after talking about rules and why we have rules. Girls. But having the students go on a rule scavenger hunt and looking for images and signals and things that they can see that signal to them a rule, and then having a discussion about it, and maybe having them draw what they see, giving them different parameters, like having the scavenger hunt when they're at the grocery store with mom, and keeping an eye out for things that indicate a rule. And so I thought that was a really interesting idea, and thinking of ways that I could send my 10th graders on scavenger hunts, but just fun activities, again, that can be applied to different levels and can really do some meaningful foundations. So thank you. Anybody, I don't want to take anyone else's turn. Does anyone else have one they want to share before we move forward? It's a really valuable resource. Okay, I appreciate everybody that shared out what they found. Thank you very much. And again, we do have this link is in the chat, and I believe it's also available in your participant folder that you can access and share as a tool for yourself and for those that may find it helpful. So Wasim, back to you. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you. And I also wanted to let you know, both of the slides in the presentation that have it, the image is a clickable link as well. So you have multiple ways to access it. I wanted to wind up with just sharing with you some of my success stories, even though we haven't had a full semester to do it outside of the COVID-19 pandemic with a single plan and a single focus. Even when I was just starting out, I had some eye-opening successes. And I want to be clear, this isn't because I'm an awesome teacher. I mean, I am an awesome teacher, but that's not why we had these successes. That's because of the kids. And the kids, once you set them free, once they understand that I really wanted them to be the change they wanted to see in the world, I had some people who really took the ball and ran with it. I had one group that was mainly driven by one student who convinced his friends that the school needed peer counselors. So he called all sorts of different agencies. I mean, I got to the point where you've already got the points for the outside contact. Let's just move on. He kept dogging it until he found an organization in the Bay Area that approved his request, trained him, got him the training. He had his folks drive him up there. He took a day off of school. He went through the peer counselor training, and they did everything except the suicide hotline portion. But then he applied, and he got a grant up to $10,000 worth of training from this organization. Unfortunately, it never went anywhere with that after that. And that's part of what I want to leave you with is make sure that you try to, if you have a program, that you try to let the younger kids have some sort of say go on, because these were seniors who graduated, and then it's like, they're gone. We had another group, and this is a little bit more lasting in terms of what they were able to do. They got tired of me telling them things like, well, we can't do that, it's against board policy, or I can't do a field trip for just this or that. So they asked me, well, what can I do? And I said, well, you figure it out. They did some research, and they figured out that in the state of California, there is a way that students can get a student trustee on the district school board. So they were actually able to do the research. They came up with a plan. They implemented it. They had way more signatures on the signature drive than they needed, and they got the district to sign off. There are 6 trustees of the Gustine Unified School District, 5 adults who are elected normally, and 1 student who's elected by the high school students. And they are everything outside of closed session, they are a board member for, which is probably more than in a lot of other districts, just because they were so impressed with all of the research these students did. A third one went way wider. There was a group that managed to contact a lawyer in Sacramento who had some contacts leading back to the Central Valley. They were able to put together an informational workshop having to do with human trafficking, immigration, and the DREAM Act, and kind of navigating that intersection, which was a lot more tricky 2 years ago than, if you've been following the news, the recent court decisions that have kind of put it a little bit more on solid ground. But they actually got this lawyer from Sacramento to come down, say his part of it. They had the Merced organization, a non-governmental organization, come in. They put on a workshop. There are 20 people, which isn't great, except that in Gustine, 20 is that's packing the room. And they were able to put that on, and it was very, very hands-off from my point of view. So I wanted to share with you what some of the things that students want to do. They are hungry to do this. I didn't drive anybody to do any of these things. I gave them the opportunity. And with a more tightly knit program, I'm hoping to go even further this year, even though we're going to be doing it in distance learning. I do have a few things that I just want to give as very practical advice. Start now. And by being here today, if you haven't already started, seems like some people have a lot more experience with civic action programs than others. But if you're just starting now, make sure you start today. And that includes pushing down into the lower grade levels so that we can help our friends and our colleagues to see how all the pieces fit together. There are lots of growing pains type of lessons, a lot of experiential lessons that you're going to have to learn the hard way. The second thing is you're going to try to find a way, you have to find a way for student voice and choice. You don't want to leave it completely wide open. Just like with civil conversations, it has to be something where there's at least some structure. You don't want to give them the opportunity to completely miss the point of the project, which was to tie their learning with the service that they're giving to the community. Because after all, we're training them with the tools of governance that they're going to use when they get out into the real world. That's why I was so happy to hear about the election. Sounds like Ms. Marmalade is my candidate, though. So I don't know how I'd handle, the Electoral College coming down on them. But really, the most important thing is the ARC. Research, planning, implementation, reflection, and iteration. I know I will do a better job this coming semester than I did last semester, simply because I'm coming back to the same ideas and I'm looking at what went before and reflecting in the moment, deciding how I'm going to iterate to the future. So that is the majority of the time that we have planned for you guys. I did want to make sure that we did have the opportunity to talk about the resources. It seems we're a little pressed for time, so I'm not going to go through all of these. But these resources on the right, I haven't really talked about other than the Constitutional Rights Foundation. These are the links that will take you to more pieces of the puzzle. If you're looking for a specific lesson, if you're looking for a specific technique or a rubric, if you're looking for a more larger scale project, then the left side, the program options are best for you. And I can't speak more highly of the Civic Action Project of the Constitutional Rights Foundation. I think that it is at least as engaging as the Mikvah Challenge, and it has the benefit of being free. So I can't recommend it more highly. I will say that the Mikvah Challenge, the materials are a bit more polished. There was less that I had to do other than translating from the Chicago, the civic footprint, translating from the political realities of Chicago to rural West Side Merced County. Took a little bit of doing. But with that being said, I think that you have everything that you need to move forward, but in truth, you always have, because being the kind of person who spends the time after school to come and listen to people talk about work, you have exactly what it takes to be somebody who is at the forefront of civic engagement in the classroom. Okay, if there are any questions, I don't want to shut them down, but I do know that we have a very important piece coming up next, and I want to be respectful of time. Are there any questions or comments that anybody has? Okay, well then what I'll go ahead and I'll do is, Carrie, I'm going to hand it off to you for the raffle.
Because here's the important
part. Go ahead and stop sharing.
We've got a raffle. Yeah, go ahead and stop
The most
sharing,
important.
and then I'm gonna share my screen. You just move it on over there.
Great presentation, by the way.
Okay, so here we go with our raffle. We're gonna go with 2 winners today. So let me, I've got everything moved. See what happens when I share my screen. I get everything moved. I had it all put where I wanted. Okay, so here are our wheel of names. And our first winner, wait for it. There we go. All right.
Oh my goodness, I am so pumped.
Yes, and you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to even tell you what you won. So before I spin it again for the second winner, 2 things. Say that again.
I already know what it is. I do it to my former students and my colleagues all the time. A virtual fist bump is the prize.
Oh, that would be nice. So virtual fist pump, everybody, right? But besides that virtual fist pump, what we are going to send you is one of our CLIC notebooks. I don't know if you can see Justin in the screen and if he has one available to hold up. And then the second thing we're going to send you is the actual hard copy compendium. So it's great to have it as a link. It's great to have it in the Google shared folder, but to have a hard copy of it, we know that that's priceless. So you're going to want to send your mailing address in a private chat to Justin so that he can send that to you. And then I'm going to spin the wheel again for our second winner. And Gail, you are our second winner of today.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if the both of you could, like I said, put your mailing address in a private chat to Justin, he will get that mailed out to you. And before anyone logs off, we do have a survey that we would like for you to complete. Justin will put the link in the chat box so that if you don't have this slide deck open, you can just click on from the chat box. This is beneficial to us. It helps us determine what we should include in our next session. And leading on into the next session, I do want to share with you, we do have a couple more things to share with you. If you've not been able to go to our other CLIC sessions, we have all of our virtual sessions in a shared folder in this link right here, in this bit.ly link. So it's available to you, even if you weren't able to make it to our Zoom session. Our next CLIC session is going to be January 26th, and it has the registration link on the bottom. We plan to have our CLIC partners at that one so that we will be able to put you guys in breakout rooms, divide you out by North Valley, South Valley, so that you can get a ton of resources from our partners that are out there, whether they are the historical societies or anybody else that we have partnered with. And just as in the beginning where Audrey introduced us, I'll close us out with saying if you want to contact any of us, we've got Audrey from Merced, Wasim from Merced, I'm Carrie from Fresno, Stephanie from Mariposa, and then Justin from Tulare. So we are available to you at any time, so that if you want to email us anytime. We'll get some resources out with you, maybe help you with your classroom or anything like that. Any questions or any last comments? And then Stephanie or Justin, if you want to close us out.
Well, thank you again so much, everybody, for coming. We really, really appreciate it. We're glad that you made it. Hopefully you found some resources that are valuable to you, either immediately or in the future, or just again, some inspiration for ways that you can incorporate civic engagement into your lessons. We know that this is a challenging time with digital learning. Some of us are in hybrid models still at this point, and it's definitely a challenge. So any little bits that we can get to help, we hope that you can find something. And again, we encourage you to continue to come to our sessions. I'm really excited about our next session, and being able to hear from some of the local historical societies with some opportunities that they may have available, either virtually or eventually in person for our students, resources and ways that we can begin to tie local history, or I should say continue to tie local history into our lessons. And we hope to see you all there. So thank you so much, you guys. We appreciate you. Thank you.